we're going to talk briefly about the difference between loading material on a mat like we just saw and loading smart material. So I've made a very brief design that just says dragons are cool with a little picture of a dragon. All right, so we wanted to take just a second here and show off our dragons are cool design that we'll be cutting out in vinyl, specifically a vinyl iron-on, so that we could put that onto a bag or a shirt or something like that. So I've set up my design, it's going to start connecting, and I wanted to briefly highlight that vinyl comes in lots of different colors. So there is sparkly silver, sparkly gold, sparkly red. You can get just about any sort of color you can think of. If you want to load it off the roll like this, you do need to buy Cricut Smart Vinyl. That's going to be the vinyl that's sized correctly for being run off the roll here. If you don't mind running it through on the mat, you can get any sort of vinyl, even just like this, and load it on the mat. The Cricut will tell you this, but if you are loading it on the mat, you want to do it shiny side down. So this will be the side that is facing up at you when you load it. But our machine is ready. On our dragons are cool design that we're going to make out of vinyl, so we're going to hit make. And in this case, since we're using a thinner roll of vinyl, we are going to change our material size here to 13. So we should be on without mat, and we want this to be 13. Within this, we can reposition parts of our design, and positioning does matter here because it is an iron-on, so it's going to look exactly like how we position it. So if I position it like this to cut out on the vinyl, we will end up with them at a diagonal when we attach it to our bag. So in this case, I want the dragon right underneath just like this. We want to make sure we're set to 13 and without mat. So with that fixed, we're going to go ahead and hit continue. That the Bluetooth is connected, we can see a glitter heat transfer vinyl today. So we're going to select this option right up here. If we had a different sort of vinyl that wasn't smart, we would just load it on mat instead of without mat. So that would be the biggest change. And when we set it to matless heat transfer vinyl, it does a couple of things. First and foremost, it turns mirror on. So you'll notice that just by default, this is switched and it has turned this on. You want that because when you cut it out, it will cut on the backside and then you'll flip it over to place it on your design. So you do want mirror mode on. Sometimes it pops up with a warning about this and sometimes it doesn't, but in general you will load iron-ons shiny side down. So you'll want to load whatever side you want as your final product facing down onto the Cricut instead of up. So we're going to make sure our lever is up. We're going to feed our material in through, in this case, the smaller two guides. And once we fed it all the way through, just so we see the bottom coming out here, we're going to push the lever down. The noise you're hearing is a small vacuum that basically holds material in place. You'll hear it with the mat, but you sometimes can hear it a little more with the matless material. And you will hear it mostly when you're loading or unloading, and it's just helping hold things flat while you're moving them around. This is now ready to do some measuring and make sure that it has loaded things correctly. So we're going to hit our flashing load button. All right, and if it feels happy with that, we can just go ahead and hit go. And this design will take a little bit longer to cut out than our previous one did. Perfect. And when it's done, since this is matless, it's going to lower the material past the point where it cuts, so just past the highest cut point, which you can very faintly see right here. And then to remove it, you're going to pull this little piece right here that lives right here. The blade sits right in this channel down here at the bottom, and we can slide it straight across. and it'll give you a nice clean cut. And just like before, that is sharp, so do be careful with that. You would basically weed your design. When you're working with iron-ons, one thing you do want to be careful of is not peeling everything off the plastic piece here. So what you want at the end is to leave just the design pieces you want attached to this front plastic sheet. And since this is a relatively simple design, we should be mostly able to just peel the corner back. Pull straight across, and then go back and do a little bit of cleanup work. So I went through, I finished taking out the pieces of our previously cut out Dragons Are Cool design, and you can see that I have left it attached to the plastic sheeting. But now when I place it on the bag, because we had mirrored it and now flipped it around, everything looks the way it should. If you would like to use the Cricut heat press, just let staff know at the desk, and they will set you up with the heat press, the cradle, and the heat press mat. On the heat press, there are a couple of instructions. This is the power button, and it is important to note that as soon as you push that power button, the heat press will begin to get warm. So you really want to make sure it's either sitting in its cradle or on the mat here. You do not want it on a table or any other surface, because if you leave it on our tables, it will just melt through our tables, and nobody wants that. To set the temperature, you're going to hit the 3 wavy lines right here, and then use the plus and minus to go up or down to the correct temperature. And then to set a built-in timer, you will hit the timer button, which is right underneath the temp guides, and then set that appropriately. And it is a little bit heavy, so you'll want to do that with it laying flat. You don't necessarily want to be holding it up while you set that. Once you are, well, to go back a step, if you're not sure what your heat settings should be, there's a couple of things you can do. Some of them will specify here on the box, so you may look and see if your material specifies what the heat settings should be. If it doesn't, there is also the Cricut heat guide. The Cricut heat guide, you can access it either by going to Cricut.com and searching heat guide, or you can access it through the heat guide icon on the left side of Cricut Design Space's home page. However you get to it, you will see this page right here. The first step is to select your material. For this project, we used a glitter iron-on. And then you will select your base material. That is whatever you're putting the iron-on on. In this case, we are using a cotton canvas bag. And then by default, it will normally set to the Easy Press 2, and you can just leave it on that. If this isn't selected, or if it asks you to make a selection, just select this one here, the Easy Press 2. And then we hit Apply, and it will tell us our temperature right here, 270 and 30 seconds. It says we need to preheat for 5 seconds and apply firm pressure when we run it for 30 seconds. With the heat mat, you want to make sure it's underneath your material. If you're doing bags, it can go inside. T-shirts too, anything with a hollow space. You can either place the heat mat inside, or you can just place your entire bag right on top of it. It gets you the same end result. We're going to go ahead and place the heat mat inside because we've got this design on the other side that we don't want to mess up. So it says start off with a 5-second preheat. So I'm going to get my bag nice and flat and situated exactly like I want it. And without my design in place on it, I'm just going to take the iron, and I'm not going to set a timer for 5 seconds. I'm just going to count to 5. And then we're going to put it back in the cradle. And now with it nice, hopefully flat and set, we're going to place our design where we'd like it. So I want this right about in the middle of my bag here. And then I'm going to take the iron, press it down. When you do this, you do want to make sure the entire iron, or at least as much of it as you can get, is on top of the heat mat. It is not pressing anything down because you don't want the heat press to be touching the table or any other materials. And then to start the timer, you hit the green go button right here on the left side. Left for me, right for you. And then that will start a timer. And since this is just firm pressure, you don't really need to be sitting here holding it like this. It'll be okay if I just let go. And then once it's done with the timer, it will make a very faint beep. I don't know if y'all were able to hear that, but it did beep to say, hey, I'm done. And we can just pull our iron off. And this is probably the most important part with vinyl iron-ons, is you need to let them cool before you start peeling them off. It can be really easy to be like, oh, I'm excited, I want to see what it looks like, and just go ahead and grab that. If it has not cooled, the design will not stick. So if I just start pulling on this now, all I'm going to do is pull my iron-on off my bag. So you do need to be patient and let that cool. While it's cooling, we can also start the iron cooling by hitting the power button here and then letting that sit. So the heat press does need to sit and cool, and we'll show off the finished products, both our card and our bag, in the next video.